note to self. But they didn't just take the money and build private villas. They spent a huge percentage of it on public works and built these remarkable, I mean, again, coming from a country with decayed cities, and I went out to Perth, and of course, everyone on the East Coast makes fun of Perth relentlessly, but in a very sort of dry, passive-aggressive Australian way. And I don't know anything about it. It's not my world. So I'm like, I'm going to Perth tomorrow. What's that like? Oh, well, it's far away. What does that mean? What? It means we don't like Perth. So I was not expecting much. And I was shocked by it. It was like a San Francisco without the junkies. It was like one of the prettiest places I've ever been. And I feel that way about all of your cities. So, I mean, somebody spent a lot of years and a lot of money and a lot of backbreaking effort to build what you have now. And it's just remarkable, but rather than being proud of it, the people who run your country are telling you you should be ashamed of it and that it doesn't belong to you. You have no claim to it at all. So the conventional understanding of this is, well, this is just what it is to be guilty. You're in a prosperous country and you feel guilty. But that's not actually what it's about. Because making people feel guilty doesn't help anybody, right? No. They're telling you it's not your country so that they can take it away from you and you won't resist when they do. Because it doesn't belong to you in the first place. And if there's one message that I hope I could pass on, and by the way, I feel a little guilty lecturing you about your country since I've been here 2 weeks and I know nothing, and there's nothing worse than a foreigner lecturing you about your own country. Well, I'm thinking through the hostility I feel when Bono comes to my country and starts lecturing me. Go back to Dublin or whatever, you know what I mean? Please leave, foreigner. So I don't want to be that preachy person at all. I'm saying this with respect, but with actual concern. I'm telling you, anyone who tells you this is not your country will take it away from you and plans to do that. And they do plan to do that. That's super obvious to me. It's really obvious to me. And this is not an attack on, any other country. By the way, I know you all are completely paranoid about China. And you have every reason to be. I don't fault the Chinese for that. If I were the Chinese, the first thing I would do is take over Australia. It's the first thing I would do. I've got a country of 1.4 billion that's crowded with not enough natural resources, and not that far away is an entire continent with 26 million people. It's got more resources than it could ever use. I'd take over that country immediately. And I wouldn't do it with warships, I'd just buy their politicians. And my sense is, yours aren't very expensive at all. In fact, one hilarious thing I've noticed, again, since I don't know anything about Australia, so you ask really stupid questions, so I learned that one of your parties is the Labour Party, and it's the party of labor unit. Boo, okay. No, but this is the hilarious part from my perspective. So I'm like going through the list of the leaders, and I'm like, okay, what trade are they in? Are they electricians, forklift drivers, plumbers, miners? None of them's ever had a job. There's no actual labor in the leadership of the Labour Party. They're all parasites on the taxpayer. It's hilarious. You don't see the humor in that when the laziest people in your country call themselves the Labour Party? Really, if you're the Labour Party, why don't you get a job? None of them ever had a job. They can't do anything. Oh, it's so funny. Can you change the tire of my truck? My air conditioner broke. Can you get over here and fix it? Oh, I'm sorry, you've only worked in the government? Why don't you go away and shut up? And the last thing you're allowed to do is tell me that it's not my country when you have literally no skills. You would starve to death without your job. I mean, trust me, I'm not making fun. I mean, I live in a country, that's run by the exact same kind of people. Joe Biden has been leeching off the taxpayer since I was 3 years old and I'm 55. Actually. My entire lifetime, Joe Biden has been getting rich without working at taxpayer expense. And also, this may be recognizable, selling influence to China. But I'm just here to tell you, as a representative from a country that's sort of farther on down the road, that it absolutely does not end well at all. And we've lived with this for many years. We also, by the way, didn't understand that the purpose of making native-born Americans feel guilty about living in America was not to right any historic injustice. It was not to help any marginalized group. They have zero interest in that, obviously. Our marginalized groups have become more marginalized over the past 50 years of talking about them incessantly. They're doing worse. They haven't been helped at all. So that's not the point. By the way, if that was the point, I'd be like, well, okay. I get a lecture once in a while, my taxes are higher, but at least it's helping somebody. I guess I'm a liberal enough to think that's, I could probably live with that. But if the people they're supposedly helping are getting more desperate every year, my country's getting crappier every year, maybe that's not the point. And I suspect, I'm just guessing that you're living with something very, very similar. Yes. So look, I know the United States is a long way away. It's 10,000 miles for me to get home. I'm going to make a suggestion. I would suggest that every person in this room scrimp and save for however long it takes and buy a round-trip ticket to London in the next couple of years. No, I'm serious. Because I have the great advantage of coming from a country that was born in dislike of the English, even though obviously I am part English, heavily English. I'm a self-hating Briton. But in my country, we exist because we broke off from Great Britain. But the three other countries that didn't, which would be Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, all three have this attitude that Britain is somehow kind of the mothership still. It's like the most impressive place. And these attitudes come from that country. And you should go see it. It's disgusting. No, I'm serious. It's disgusting. And from 1945 until present, Britons have been told that you're terrible, that you're somehow guilty of some non-specified crime. Normal people are the criminals in Great Britain. And by employing that method of psychological control, that psyop, which is exactly what it is, they have managed to turn that country into a slum. And if you haven't been there recently, you should. And I was thinking about it this week when Julian Assange finally got out of a British prison after 5.5 years. I visited him there a few months ago at Belmarsh. I got so upset sitting in my barn in Maine in the middle of nowhere thinking about Assange that I just called his wife and said I want to come over and see him, which I did. And I visited him at the prison, and the prison was slightly better than the surrounding city, I thought, just in terms of cheerfulness. But it was. I'm serious. It is a fog-shrouded slum. But I asked her and him, we're meeting with him there at Belmarsh after being strip searched. I managed to get my nicotine pouches in anyway. Yeah, that's right. Some things are worth committing crimes for. But anyway, not to brag. I'm never going there again, so I can say this. But I said to you, what have you been charged with? Nothing. Never charged with a crime in Great Britain. And they held him in maximum security, basically trying to torture him to death for 5.5 years. After 7 years locked away in the Ecuadorian embassy, never charged him with a crime. And I thought to myself, this is a criticism, but I mean it in the best way. What about your country of birth? Where are they in this? Why didn't you sail a warship up the Thames and get your man out? And I'll tell you exactly why, which is because your leaders genuflect before that country. And they shouldn't, because the truth is, they have no moral authority. This is such a nicer place than that. You should go from your cities to their cities and ask a really simple question. Who's doing a better job? You are. You're doing a better job. And you should also go because that could be your future if you don't get control. And by get control, I mean you cannot allow them to make you feel guilty for being Australian, that you cannot allow them to tell you this is not your nation when your ancestors built it, you were born here, you pay taxes to that government. No, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't mean you're sensitive. It means you are craven and being prepared to be hurt. And I think it's already happening. I was so impressed by a couple of your cities, I'll just give you a perfect example, that I started looking up your real estate listings. Because I thought, I don't know if I'm welcome here.